Hello, in this video I'll show you how to use Blade component. Blade component allows you to slice or demolish object. And to do so, first of all, you need to apply rigid component to object which you want to slice. Then you need to set here demolition type to runtime, and then enable the slice by blade property. Only in this case it will be possible to slice this object. Then you need to start play mode. And as you can see, Blade component automatically add this box collider based on this quad mesh that I'm using here. You don't need to have any mesh on the blade. I'm using it here only just so it will create box collider with the same size. You don't even need to seed it because it also shows the slicing plane. Here you can see there's this box collider, and blade component require you to have this trigger collider so it will know when it will interact with object you want to slice, and it will know when it should initiate slicing. You can add your own collider with your own size, but if you don't have any, it will create this default box collider. And then you just need to slice your object and it will be sliced. Also, you can use some kind of sword, like this is my wannabe sword. Pretty lame, I know, but just to show you how it works, you don't need to apply blade component to actual geometry of your sword. You can have this special object with blade component and then just make it just a child of the sword. Disable its mesh renderer, and then you'll get this blade component as part of your sword, and then you can move it whenever you want, make it any size, and it will work in the same way. So this is the basic setup for blade component. And before start explaining how all these blade properties works, first I want to show you how this depth property works when it used with blade component. When you create regular demolition with depth 1, it means that you can demolish your object to fragments, but all these fragments will not be possible to demolish further. And with depth 2, it means that you will be able to demolish fragments one more time and so on. But with blade, depth level 1 means that you will be able to slice your object only once. So you can see my column here, its depth set to 1, and I can slice it once. But after that, I won't be able to slice it again, because right now, you can see it says demolition depth 1 to 1. So it means you cannot demolish and slice this column. This column I set my depth to 2, and it means that I can slice it once, and then I can slice it one more time, but not anymore. So in this case, you can use this depth to limit amount of slices your object can take. But if you want to make your object to be sliced unlimited amount of times, then you can set depth to 0. And in this case, you can see I disabled my collision demolition here, so object will be sliced, but it will not be demolished by collision. And in this case, you can slice your object as many times as you want. But in case you want to slice your object a limited amount of times, then you need to set amount of times you want to slice it here in depth property. And first property in blade component is action, and it allows you to actually define what exactly you want to do, slice or demolish object. In most of the cases, you will obviously need to slice your object, but in some cases, you can use it to initiate demolition of your object. Here are my 4 columns and 1 blade. This one is set to slice. This is how it works. And this second one I'm using in demolition. I set action to demolish. And here my rigid component, you can see its demolition type set to runtime. So this will be default demolition. It will be demolished to these 50 fragments. For this one, I'm using custom shatter component. Here you can see my shatter component with bricks fragmentation type. For the third one, I'm using reference demolition, so you can use blade to initiate demolition to reference you want. So in this case, I defined this prefab with 150 fragments. And this one I'm using also runtime demolition, but in this case, I enable this runtime caching here. And I also enable this skip first property. So it means that first demolition will be skipped. It will only cache all the fragments, and then it will wait for second demolition. And only after that, it will create all these fragments. And this way you can use blade object with demolish action to initiate this caching. Instead of using method, you can just use your game objects to initiate this caching. So first I swing it over this object. And now you can see its fragments meshed already cached. While I was moving, they already were cached. Now this object is ready to be demolished. And if I will move it second time, only after that it will be demolished to fragments. So in this way you can use blade component to slice your object, to initiate demolition, and as you can see you can initiate caching, and only then you can demolish your object by blade or maybe by collision. Next property here is onTrigger, and it allows you to define when you want your object to be sliced. So there are three ways to slice your object. First one is when trigger collider enter the object you want to slice. Then second one is when trigger collider is exiting. And third one is also slice object when it's exiting, but it takes into consideration the position where it entered and angle of the blade when it entered this object. So here are three examples. First one is set to enter, and this time it will slice your object when it will touch it. And just also you can see that there's this collider of this object. Here at this middle area, it's wider than actual mesh. So in this case, collision will happen before object will collide with actual mesh. So this is something you should take into account in case your collider is bigger than the actual mesh. Then slice will also happen before blade will touch actual mesh. And in this case, I'm using this exit on trigger exit. And in this case, you can see I'm entering, nothing happens. So it will be sliced only when this collider will exit object's collider. And in this example, I'm using enter exit. This way I will exit under this angle, but then I will rotate it like that and exit at this angle. And here you can see my slice angle is average of the angle when I entered and angle when I quit this collider. So in this case, with enter exit on trigger property, it will use average angle and average position. Next property is slicing plane, and it allows you to define the actual plane which will be used to slice your object. And it is very important to set correct slicing plane. You can see it by enabling this show plane toggle. And in this case, you can see I'm using correct slicing plane. And this is why I get correct slices. But for this one, I set it to XZ. And obviously it won't be correct because it will be perpendicular to this slicing plane of my mesh which I'm using, and collider also based on this mesh. In case you can see slice was not correct. So make sure that you set correct slicing plane when you want to slice your object over a specific axis. It is possible to apply damage to your rigid component using this damage property here. To do so, we need to enable damage in your rigid component here and set max damage you want the object to take. And then start colliding with your object. So you can see this first blade is set to demolish action. And after first swing, it increases this current damage of this rigid component. So I am swinging one more time. Now it's 70. And after third time, it will be demolished. Same way it works for slice. You can see this blade action set to slice. So I'm swinging once. Current damage increased. Swinging one more time. Now it's 70. And after the third time, it actually will be sliced. So using this damage property, you can kind of swing over your object several times, and only after several times it will be demolished or sliced. In previous examples, I was using this physics material ice for my columns, so this is why there was such low friction. But in case you're using some other material types, after you slicing your object, they may just stay still. So here you can see I sliced my column, but it just stayed here simply because of high friction. It wasn't demolished. Even though it's dynamic, it just stayed there. And this is why you can use this force to add some kind of force to the sliced fragments. So they will will be pushed away from each other a little bit. And in this example here, I'm using force 1 for this blade. Here you can see it pushed a little bit this fragment and it fell down. And for this one, I'm using big value. It's 4 now, so it will be pretty big push. But you got the idea how this force works and when you may need to use it. If you want to make your blade component not so harmful, you can use this cooldown property. So it will make sure that after first slice, blade won't be able to make any other slices during this cooldown time. It measures in seconds. And in this example on the left, I set it to 0. So it means it's disabled. And this blade will make as much slices as it can. See, create a bunch of slices one after another. And in this example here, I'm using cooldown 2. And it means that after first slice, it will wait for 2 seconds, and only after that it will be able to make another slice. As you can see, using this cooldown property, you can limit your blade in amount of slices it can make during a specific time. And another way to limit your blade component is to use the tag or mask filters. For this example on the left, I am using slice tag, and here are my 2 columns. For the first one, tag set to untagged, and for the second one, it's set to slice. And as you can see, only second column will be sliced. And in the same way it works for mask. You can define layer which you want to affect. In this case, I defined the slice layer. And in the same way, first column here, it has this default layer, and second one has a slice layer. So just like with tags, only second column will be sliced. So this is how this tag and mask property works. In previous examples, I actually had to move my blade through object to initiate slicing using its collider, but it is also possible to initiate it manually for specific objects. So your blade component can stay where you want it to be. You don't need to swing it, move it. But to do so, you need to define these targets. In this case, I will use this column here. Then you can use this slice target public void method to initiate slicing of the subject. And if you want to test this in editor, you can use the slice target button. So that's it. You just initiate this slicing and it will slice your object over its infinite slicing plane. And the same way you can define multiple targets. You can see in this case I'm using these 3 columns. But in this case you need to make sure that your cooldown is set to 0 because it will be bigger than 0. It will slice only first object because then it won't be able to slice second because its cooldown still will be in progress. So make sure that your cooldown is 0. And also there is this demolition quarter time in Rayfire Man. It's 30 milliseconds. Thanks to this property, it will make sure that there will not be more demolition than you want them to be during 1 frame. So there won't be any frame per second drop. I will explain this in refinement tutorial, but just keep this in mind that this is where you can define amount of time you can allow for demolitions to happen. And 0.03 means 30 milliseconds. And if it will be 30 milliseconds for this 3 column, and I will initiate slicing, well, it was big enough to create them all. But if, let's say, I will decrease it to 10 milliseconds, try again. Now you can see it sliced only first one, because after first slice, it figured that it took more than 10 milliseconds, and this is why other wasn't sliced. But again, this can be fixed by this quarter action, and it's set to skip by default, but if you will set it to postpone, then it will slice all these 3 columns, but not at the 1 frame, but during 3 frames. So now it's postponed. But that will be in manager tutorial. Just wanted to explain you if you will use this target slicing and some of the object won't be sliced. This is where you should take a look. First of all, set cooldown to 0, and then make sure in manager you have enough time quarter. And if it's not enough, you can set here postpone, and all slices will happen, but not at the 1 frame, but during several frames.